When you decide what you want, who you want to be, it is happening. I want to share with you multiple stories in this video, multiple examples. And I'm going to start off with this one story from this person who I did a video on her last summer, and we did a follow-up session, and it is so romantic. Like, I was almost like in tears listening to her. I was just like, oh my God, keep talking because I love this so much, right? And I want to share with you what happened, what took place inside of her. And she shared with me things to share with all of you that really moved her into getting the movement that she desired to experience in her life. We're going to hit the topic of conviction, decision, and being that person in a different way that I intend is going to hit all of you in exactly the way that you want it, need it, like it, whatever it. Call it whatever you want. Stay the end because you're going to like this video. Welcome, my name is Rose. Welcome to The Rosey Life, where we help you free your mind and follow your heart so you live a life that you love. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me or joining the Rosey Life course and community or any of the other stuff, just go to RoseyLife.com. All the information is down below. It's always the same in the bottom. My email's there. My contact information there. It's all in the information box below. Okay? All right. So let's get to this story of this client that I had a session with a couple of days ago. She gave me permission to share it. So I did a video on her, I believe it was last summer. And I talked about, and this was about her SP. And she ended up finally running into him and lives in the same town as him, and finally ended up running into him on the road. And then they pulled over and chatted. And she was like, it went from crickets to that. And I don't remember which video it was, but she had a follow-up session with me a couple days ago. And she wanted to share with me because she said, she booked the session, and I'm going to get into more details. You guys, it's so good. I'm going to get into details about her story, but what she revealed to me and what is like so powerful, so wonderful. You guys are going to want to hear what she has to say and what moved her. So what happened is she had movement, okay, with her person over the summer. And then it went flat. And then there was nothing that happened after that. And this is what this the story is about. Okay, so and then some. All right. So here we go. Okay. So get my board situated here. Okay. So she said, I was doubting if I was only manifesting running into her SP or manifesting sightings of my SP on the road. And that's it. Because she saw him on the road last summer. She saw him a couple times. And she said, I was getting frustrated because she decided to book a session with me because she saw him on the road again. And she's like, what the hell? Why do I just keep seeing him on the road? And like, I want more than just sightings, SP sightings, right? So she said, I hope I'm not somehow, some way, something inside of me is just manifesting sightings, SP sightings. I thought that was so funny. And so she felt a little fear that she was doing something wrong. So I booked a session with you out of that fear, okay? And then I said, wait, I know what she'll tell me. She even said, she's like, I know what you're going to tell me. And I know what to do. I already know the law. I know what's going on. And she says, but I just wanted to talk to you anyway. and she says, I know what you'll tell me. Then I saw him on the road again. She was like, what the hell? I saw him again. She saw him a couple lanes over. And she says, I didn't think he saw me though. She says, I saw him, but because he was a couple lanes over, she says, I didn't think he saw me. So I just went to work and assumed that that is part of the unfolding. But yet she was still carrying around this fear that that something was off. Okay. So she said that night he called and had left her a voicemail. Somehow she missed his call and he had a voicemail. Guess what? He saw her. And he said, I saw you and I couldn't not call you. And so he called her and then they met. They ended up meeting up. I don't know if it was that day or the next day, but they ended up meeting up. And this whole time, and it was about 6 months, okay, that she hadn't heard from him, and there was a third party involved, okay. So she was like, all in her head, and she was like, "What's happening?" Right? So she said the whole time, the 6 months, he was actually watching her. Okay, so I have to pause it for a second. So for the last 5 or 6 months it was that she hadn't heard from him. Then she ran into him. She thought something was wrong. And she hadn't heard from him. She didn't know anything about him. She hadn't even seen him until recently she saw him. And she thought, well, okay, I'm going to work, but I'm not going to stop. But I don't think he saw me anyway. I'm just going to assume that this is part of the unfolding. Well, she got a message from him. And he said, I saw you and I had to call you. And then they met. But guess what? Here's the most wonderful part of this. When they met up in person to talk, she wasn't the one talking. He did all the talking. And he said, I know that this is happening in your life. I know that's happening in your life. I know this is happening in your life. And she's like, how do you know all this? He said, because I have my ways. He says, I've had my eye on you this whole time. I have not been following you, watching you. And he doesn't have social media, she said. But somehow, some way, he still had his eye on her because he said he never stopped loving her, that she's the one and only one for him, that there's no one else that he's meant to be with, that he only wants to be with her. And this was the most beautiful part, you guys. I'm not going to cry. You don't have to wait anymore. He said, you don't have to wait anymore. He told her, he says, I know that you've been waiting. And he says, you don't have to wait anymore. Whoa, what happened? She stopped waiting. And when she stopped waiting, he told her, you don't have to wait anymore. We are going to be together. You are the love of my life. I was like, oh my God, this is so romantic. I'm dying. I love it so much. So this is what she wanted to share with you. And this is really the meat of this video. She said, one, the first thing that I realized is that I was looking. She kept asking, where is he? How come he's not calling? Why aren't we together? I already had an encounter with him over the summer. I thought things were moving. What's going on? Where is he? She kept looking for the movement. She kept looking for what was going to happen next. She got the movement and then she forgot that she is a movement, and she went back to searching and looking externally for more movement. Do you see? He was mirroring her perfectly. And so she said, the first thing that I stopped myself and I said, no more looking. She said, everything is happening now. Everything's unfolding now. Everything is now. There's no waiting. Everything's happening now. Instead of looking and asking why I'm not seeing movement, where is it? It's been this long, which she was really easily stuck into. She moved and decided that everything is now. Everything's unfolding right now. And then the second thing she said, and these were her takeaways from what moved her, okay? She said, she would say, what can I do right now that feels good for me. So many teachers talk about this, right? And like Bashar talks about it. Joe Dispenza talks about it. A lot of teachers talk about this in different way. I mentioned at the beginning of my video, follow your heart, follow your heart. In other words, what feels good right now? That's what she was asking herself. It's not like, oh, I need a hobby. Do I need to move cities? Do I need to move my apartment or house or doing whatever? No, it's not about grandiose things. It's just what feels good to do for me right now. And she said sometimes it would just be lying on her sofa watching Netflix. And other times it might be for a walk or going to grab a bite to eat or just moving. I don't want to sit. I want to lay down now. It's like what feels good to me right now. And she would do that and then keep asking herself that question next. And it's just continuously going one foot in front of the other, slowly, just saying, now what feels good right now for me? And so she was just bringing her awareness to the present moment. That's what she's doing. And then the third thing is feelings and fears and thoughts. She said when she would have fears of anxiety or doubt or the old story like nothing's moving, I've done this before, it didn't work before, why do I think it's going to work now? She said no. She'd tell herself, relax. She said, it's the old me dying. So those fears, those feelings, those thoughts, those stories, that's the old me dying. I'm becoming more of who I am. So she labeled all her feelings and fears of doubt. She labeled those as evidence of her expanding and becoming more of who she truly is. That's what she decided to label any doubts, any fears. She says, that's the old me dying. And I've had quite a few of success stories talk about this, that they looked at anytime they had doubts and fears, they just said, no, that's the old me dying. And she said, and this is just me expanding, me becoming more of who I am. That's what's going on. And she said, with that, she would instantly feel at peace. And then she would go to this, what can I do right now for myself that feels good right now? Instead of trying to feel better, instead of trying to not think about it, she wasn't doing this to feel better. She was doing this just literally to keep in the flow and in following the script that she's in. She was just following what was next in front of her instead of resisting or fighting against it. She just kept saying yes and going with the flow of things in front of her. And if these thoughts and feelings would come up, she would label them and say and give them meaning. She decided what they meant. And she said, this is the old me dying and I'm becoming more aware of who I am. And so doing something that feel good now wasn't to make herself feel better, or to change her feelings or change her thoughts. It was just to keep moving in the now. That's it. Do you see? I don't want you guys to think that she was using that to feel better. No, this is just following her heart, following her joy. Do you see? So that was what really moved her in, and it was like in a day or two that she ended up seeing him and getting a call from him and meeting up with him and him pouring and confessing his entire heart to her. And she was just like floored. She was just like, oh my God, it's everything she wanted to hear from him and more. But it wasn't until she she declared, no, I'm not that woman who's waiting anymore. I'm not her. She decided, she made a decision, and she stepped into her power and said, this is happening now. Everything is happening now. And it doesn't mean because you say everything's happening now that you're just like going to say, you may see things instantly happen in a second or a minute or 5 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or 2 days or whatever. But she wasn't even holding on to when it was going to happen. She just went into her power and she said, I'm the eternal now and everything is happening now. And anything that came up, that's how she allowed it to be. She didn't fight it. She decided what it meant. Do you see? And then she moved like, okay, what can I do that feels good for me now? She wasn't saying, I'm going to do this for 7 days and see what happens. Or I've been doing this for 3 days. I did that for 3 weeks and nothing happened. No, no, none of that. Because if you do that, if she would have done that, that's just her going back to her old self. So here's what I want to get into further with this. Okay, so when you decide, when you hear me talk about making a choice and you decide, that's conviction. And conviction is, I am it now, not in the future. Because remember, my last video talked about there's no past or future, there's only the eternal now. And so you're deciding, you make a decision. Let's talk about decision for a second, because I want to talk to you about three three examples with my son, and I just had this conversation with him over the last week, and so he said he's been saying he wants a car for, I don't know, 6 months or a year now. He's already owned two and sold them. But now for the last year he's been saying, I want a car, I want a car, I want a car, I want a car. Well, we were in my car the other day together, and I said, when you decide you want a car, you're going to have a car. And he looked at me and he said, I want a car. I just decided. I've been deciding I want a car. I want a car. And I said, no, you just keep saying you want a car, but you haven't made the decision that you will have a car. And he looked at me, he's like, I want a car more than anything. I decided I want a car. I have decided I want a car. And I said, okay. I said, when you decide, you are going to have that car. And then he said, what are you talking about? And I reminded him that when when we lived in California still, he wanted to take this exam, an early entrance exam. And he said, I want to take this early entrance exam from school. And I said, okay. I said, I'm game. I said, I'll pay the fee, but you have to study. And he said, okay, deal. The test came, he failed. And he said, I didn't study for it. I lied. I didn't study for it. And I said, okay. I said, well, you go back to school in the fall. And he said, I don't want to. And I said, well, you have to because you failed the test. He said, can I take it again? And I said, you can. I said, I'm not going to pay for that fee again if you're not studying. And he said, no, I promise, please, I promise I'll study. And I said, okay. So I observed him studying. And I said, all right. I said, you're putting in some work here. I'm watching you. You're studying. So I'll pay for the fee. So I paid the fee the second time. He failed. And then after that, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not paying that fee again. I said, this isn't like, no. And I said, if you want to take that test again, I said, you're going to have to get a job and pay for it yourself. And he's like, fine, I'll pay the fee. I said, but it's not just about paying a fee. I said, you haven't decided to pass that test. And he said, well, it's math, it's hard, and this is hard, and the questions are confusing, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I said, blah, blah, blah. I said, when you're ready and you decide to pass that test, you will pass that test. And he got a job, paid for the fee, okay, and then he said, I do need help with math. Can you get me some tutoring on math? And I said, sure, I'll help you with the math tutoring. So he got the help with the math tutoring, and he had to cough up that payment. And let me tell you, it was not a small fee. And what he was making back then, that was a lot of money to him. And he was just like, oh my God. And I said, exactly. And he said, I'm passing this test. He decided. And that third time, he passed that test. Why did he pass it? Because he decided he was going to pass that test. It wasn't because it was a third time. It wasn't because of the tutoring. It wasn't because of he paid for it. And I know that's what all of you are going to think. But guess what? All of those components could have been there. The money's there, the tutoring's there. But until he decided that he would pass that test, he did not want the alternative. He did not want to have to go back to school. He wanted to pass the test. He passed it. I reminded him this week of that when he was talking about a car. I said, do you remember when you finally decided to pass that test? And he said, yes. I said, when you decide to have a car, you'll have a car. Then I gave him another example. I said, when you decide to get a job, I said, you find a job like this. And he said, yes. I said, but when you lollygag around and you apply and you're like, I just don't want to. I don't want to work. I don't want to. I said, how many offers do you get? He said, none. No one will hire me. I said, but when you make a decision that you're getting a job, do you find one? And he said, yes. I said, there you go. When you make a decision that you're going to have a car, you'll have a car. Oh, it's the money. I said, you have money. You get paid good at your job. He said, oh, it's because of I can't find the kind of car I want because it's only located in certain cities. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. I said, when you make a decision, it happens. And he got quiet after that. And he said, okay, I understand. I do. I have to make the decision if I'm going to do this or not. Because when he makes a decision, and I see this with the clients that I work with every week, with the ones that I work with regularly, I can tell when they've actually had enough and they've made a decision on what they want. That's when it happens for them. But those are like, oh, I choose it. I've been choosing it for 15 years, Rose. And I'm like, okay. Okay, I'm not you. I don't know when you've actually made a decision. But when I with my son or with people that I see consistently, I'm like, it becomes a little easier for me to tell. However, you don't need me to tell you if you made a decision because you know when you've made a decision. Like I pointed out to my son, only he knows when he has decided that it is so. So when you make a decision, okay, that decision is conviction. That conviction is I am it now. So when you decide I am whatever it is that you desire to be, right? You stop looking for evidence of it outside of you. You stop looking to see if you've become that person. You don't look for it because you are busy being that person. You are that person. You're not, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. I think I feel something. I think something changed. You're not looking for the evidence that you've changed within to prove that I have changed. And why isn't the 3D change? Do you see you're still caught up in looking for the internal evidence or for the external evidence, looking for proof that you've changed? When you're doing that, you clearly have not changed. Because when you decide you are something, you are it. You are it, period. There's no if and buts. There's no plan B. You are it. And I heard this from Bashar's teachings, and many of you have heard it probably too, about that you're the lighthouse, and the lighthouse produces the light. So when you're out here looking for where the light is coming from, the evidence of your desires, where it's coming from you. But you can't see it because you are it. You are the light. You are the evidence. You are the decision. You are the desire. You are it. That's why you can't see it. And I was talking to several clients today about this, and I said, when you decide that you are something, I said, you can't see the change because you are that person. You are that change. So rest in knowing that you have changed, that you are the change, that you are the person you desire to be. And you're not going to see the evidence of it on the outside. You're not going to feel the evidence of it on the inside because you are the evidence. You are the change. You are all of it. It's all coming from you. That's why it's exuding from you. And when you are that person, you're not looking for evidence. That's when you see the change. Just like this client that I had, she decided that she would stop looking for the evidence, for the movement, for her person. She said, no, I am everything right now and everything that I feel. In other words, she no longer focused on him. She was putting all the focus on her. She was saying everything is now. all my thoughts and feelings. These are all evidence of me dying to my old self and me becoming more of who I am. And what do I want to do for myself that feels good right now? Do you see all the focus? She just showered herself. She was the focus. And that's when she made that decision to be her instead of looking for evidence on the outside or feelings to find out if she was her or not. Do you see? So I hope you guys like the video, and thank you guys so much for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing to The Rosey Life. Thank you for being here. I love you guys so, so much. And I will see you all very soon because you're all so freaking amazing. All right, bye.